The jungle is still. A shadow moves between the ferns. No spears, no traps, just bare hands, and in front of them, a beast looms, bigger than an elephant, covered in thick fur, claws longer than daggers. It's the giant ground sloth. And this isn't fiction, it's history. Our ancestors, armed with nothing but courage and cunning, once faced these ancient titans and won. But how and why risk everything in a fight that seems impossible to survive? What you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a forgotten war for survival, long before the world knew cities, kings, or steel. The Americas were ruled by creatures so massive and strange, they seemed born of myth. Among the most formidable was the giant ground sloth Megatherium, towering over 13 feet when it reared on its hind legs and weighing up to 4 tons. This creature moved slowly but carried the strength of 10 men. Its massive claws, curved like sickles, could tear tree trunks apart. Its fur was thick and shaggy, perfect for the cooler Pleistocene climates, and its hide was tough enough to resist even the sharpest natural weapons. But the strangest part, despite its size, this behemoth was a herbivore feeding on leaves, bark, and shrubs. It wasn't a predator, but that didn't mean it wasn't dangerous. Any creature cornered, especially one with claws like blades and strength enough to crush bones, could become lethal. And for the small bands of early humans migrating through South America, crossing paths with such a beast wasn't just terrifying, it was a test of survival. No modern weapons, no backup, no safety net, just stone-tipped spears, sharpened sticks, and a brain wired for invention. This was the setting where 2 titans collided, not just beast versus man, but instinct versus intelligence, brawn versus strategy. And the most astonishing part, humans didn't just survive these encounters, they hunted the giant sloths down. Imagine standing barefoot in a dense prehistoric forest, your breath misting in the cool morning air. The trees are towering and silent, the underbrush thick with shadows. Somewhere nearby, a giant ground sloth is moving slow, deliberate, and unaware of your presence. You crouch behind a rock, holding a crude spear hardened in fire, not because it's ideal, but because it's all you have. There are no bronze blades, no iron-tipped arrows, no armor to protect your skin. Just you, your tribe, and a desperation born from hunger. Early humans were not apex predators. We were thin-skinned, slow, and fragile compared to the monsters of our time. Saber-toothed cats prowled the hills. Terror birds stalked the plains. And then there were the ground sloths, massive, unpredictable, and nearly unkillable if uninjured. But our ancestors weren't just brave, they were cornered. The Ice Age world didn't offer mercy. It offered choices. Adapt or die. Food was scarce. Hunting smaller animals fed only a few. One giant kill, however, a creature like a Megatherium could feed an entire tribe for weeks, provide hides for clothing, bones for tools, and fat for fire. That alone made the impossible worth attempting. They weren't chasing glory, they were fighting extinction. But how do you even approach such a creature without being torn apart? That question pushed early humans to evolve, not just in body, but in mind. They learned patience, cooperation, and tactics. They read tracks in the mud, memorized the paths to watering holes, and moved silently through brush, communicating in hand signals and glances. Hunting wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. It was the ritual of defying death with nothing but instinct and a spark of genius. In every sloth hunt, the odds were stacked. One wrong move, and the hunter became the hunted. But still, they went forward, not because they were fearless, but because they had no other choice. The Megatherium, one of the largest land mammals to ever walk the earth, weighed up to 4 tons and stood taller than a double-decker bus when on its hind legs, covered in thick fur and with claws as long as kitchen knives. It wasn't a predator, but it didn't need to be. Its sheer size was defense enough. A single swipe could shatter bones. Its hide was tough, its reach vast, and yet early humans dared to hunt it. They didn't do it alone. A tribe worked as one organism. Some would act as bait, revealing themselves only to retreat and lure the beast toward an ambush. Others waited silently, hidden in trees or behind rock outcroppings, with sharpened stakes driven into the earth. The sloth would trudge forward, slow but unstoppable, till the ground betrayed it. It would stumble into a trap, impaled or immobilized, and the hunters would descend. This wasn't a clean kill. It was a savage, prolonged struggle. The sloth would roar not like a lion, but with a deep, guttural groan, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Blood would spill, spears would snap. Sometimes the beast would fall. Other times the humans would. But in those victories, no matter how costly, the tribe found life. The meat was sacred, the fat a gift, the bones carved and preserved. Some scholars believe early cave paintings, those with massive, strange beasts, depict these very battles. Not just stories, memories, passed down in ochre and charcoal, echoing the bravery of ancestors who hunted giants with nothing but grit and sharpened sticks. It was brutal, it was brilliant, and it was human. The terrain was unforgiving. Glaciers groaned in the distance, and the ground beneath the hunters' feet was half-frozen mud, slick with meltwater and ash from distant volcanic skies. This wasn't just a hunt, it was war. Against nature, against time, against a creature that had ruled for millions of years. But the humans had something new. Not sharper claws, not thicker hides, but minds that could plan, remember, imagine. And that changed everything. They began studying the beasts, learning their habits like a whispered code from the earth itself. The giant sloths were slow, yes, but cautious. They didn't wander alone. They stayed close to thick forests and steep cliffs. So the hunters adapted. They waited at the forest's edge, blending with bark and shadow. Some dug concealed trenches near watering holes. Others used fire-controlled and terrifying to flush the beasts into kill zones. Smoke would fill the air, and the giant would stumble through the haze, confused and panicked. That's when they struck. Their weapons weren't polished or elegant. They were raw stone blades fixed to wooden shafts with sinew, ash-hardened by fire. But they didn't need perfection. They needed numbers. Dozens of spears flying at once. Each one a whisper of death, cutting into the sloth's flesh, slowing it, weakening it, bringing the colossus down inch by inch. Some say this is when the giants began to disappear. The world warmed, the forests shifted. But it wasn't just the climate, it was us. We didn't just survive. We outsmarted them, outnumbered them, and we remembered. The stories passed from campfire to cave wall weren't just about triumph. They were warnings that no creature, no matter how powerful, could stand forever against the will of humankind. The end wasn't sudden. It came like winter slow, creeping, inevitable. Fewer sloths were seen each season. Their trails grew faint, their dung cold, and undisturbed. Hunters would follow old paths only to find silence. And in that silence, Something changed in the hearts of those who once stalked giants. Victory turned to absence. The thrill of the hunt faded into a strange Ica world, less wild, less thunderous, but there were still echoes. In remote valleys, legends told of lone survivors, massive shadows glimpsed at dusk, or distant howls mistaken for wind. Old shamans claimed they could still feel the earth tremble now and then, as if one of the old gods still breathed beneath it. Whether truth or myth, it didn't matter. The memory had already been carved into bone, into stone, into the minds of children who would never know the terror or beauty of a giant. Sloth's final charge. And perhaps that's what makes them eternal. Not their bones buried deep under centuries of dust, but the legacy they left in us, the courage they forced us to find, the tools they inspired us to shape, the unity they demanded from scattered tribes, who learned through blood and frost that they were stronger together. The last sloth may have died alone, its breath slow, its eyes dimming under unfamiliar stars, but its story lives on. In every spear we raise, in every fire we build, in the quiet knowing that once we stood face to face with a titan and we endured. Beneath the forests and fields we now walk, buried under layers of sediment and silence, lie the remains of a forgotten war. Giant sloth bones, twisted and shattered, rest in ancient traps humans once carved into the earth. Obsidian blades still glint beneath layers of dust, their edges dulled by time but their stories sharp as ever. Archaeologists unearth these fragments like whispers from another world, a world where man did not yet rule, but was learning how to dot. Each bone tells a story, not just of the creature, but of the people who stood against it. The way a femur was. Cracked suggests the angle of a blow. A healed rib speaks of a battle survived. Sometimes, beside the remains of the beasts, they find the remains of hunters' worn teeth, crushed skulls, hands still curled around the weapons that failed them. It is not a story of dominance, but of sacrifice. In some caves, painted walls still echo with ochre figures stick like humans, dancing around mammoth silhouettes, spears raised high. Among them, the sloth appears as a mountain with claws, dwarfing its pursuers, yet surrounded. These aren't just hunting scenes, they're proof of what mattered most. Remembrance, a record scratched into stone so those who came next would know who they were and what they had faced. Today, we marvel at their courage. We walk in cities they could never dream of, speak into devices they couldn't imagine. But in every act of bravery, in every step into the unknown, their legacy survives. They were the first storytellers, the first warriors, the first to say, "This world will not break me." And the bones still wait quiet, massive, unmoving, reminding us that long before the rise of kings or the birth of gods, there were giants, and those brave enough to hunt them with nothing but their bare hands and unshakable will. They moved in complete silence, an unspoken pact between predator and prey. The humid forest seemed to hold its breath as the sloth, massive and unaware, trudged slowly through a patch of soft earth. Its shaggy fur dragged twigs and leaves along with it, camouflaging its hulking body in the underbrush. But above, in the canopy, 5 men lay in wait, crouched like spirits of the forest. Their bodies were lean, carved by hunger and hardened by cold rivers and jagged stones. Their eyes burned with a focus only survival could forge. Every breath they took was measured, every heartbeat drowned beneath the chirping of cicadas and distant howls. Then a signal, a low whistle like wind through reeds. In a blink, they dropped like ghosts, Spears carved from mammoth bone struck first, not to kill, but to wound. The sloth bellowed in rage, rearing onto its hind legs, staller than any of them, its claws like scythes, its roar echoing across the trees. But the hunters didn't flinch. This was their moment, the ritual of risk that gave meaning to their lives. One man darted in close, baiting the beast, while the others circled, tightening the noose. The sloth lunged, and that's when they struck again and again until the monster stumbled, then fell, its great body shaking the earth. Blood mingled with mud. Silence returned. Not celebration, not yet, only reverence. They knelt beside the creature not as victors, but as men who understood the cost of the kill. That meat would feed their families. Its bones would become tools, its fur warmth for the old and the young. It wasn't just a hunt. It was survival etched into the marrow of memory, passed from fathers to sons, from one beating heart to the next, carried through time like fire cupped in calloused hands. So the next time you find yourself doubting what humans are capable of, remember this: we once hunted giants, barefoot in the mud, with stone in our hands and fire in our hearts, and somehow we won. If this story stirred something ancient within you, if it made you see your ancestors not as shadows of the past, but as sparks in your blood, then don't let it fade. Subscribe to Lost Legacy, where history isn't just told, it's felt. Every week we bring forgotten tales to life with raw cinematic storytelling that honors the wild, the brave, and the untamed. Join us and rediscover the fierce, fearless legacy that still lives in you.